Welcome to this explainer. Okay, picture a scene you've probably lived, 100 times. You pull up to a petrol station, swipe your card, start pumping, and boom. In like 2 minutes, you hear that familiar click, and you just drive away. It's such an ordinary routine, right? But today, we're going to look right past that super simple transaction. Because what if I told you that the liquid you just casually pumped into your car actually has this incredible, sprawling backstory? We're talking a journey spanning literal oceans, massive industrial refineries, thousands of miles of underground pipelines, and even complex global financial markets. There are thousands of people coordinating this massive effort long before you ever even arrived at the pump. So yeah, that quick 2-minute stop, it is far from simple. To actually wrap our heads around this system, we really have to zoom way, way out, like millions of years into the past. Imagine the ancient oceans just absolutely teeming with microscopic organisms. When they died, they sank to the seafloor. And over hundreds of thousands of years, immense geological heat and crushing pressure practically cooked all this organic matter, completely transforming it. Fast forward to the present era, and that ancient matter is now crude oil, trapped deep, deep down beneath some incredibly dense rock layers. But here's the thing, finding those hidden, deep underground reservoirs, it is a monumental challenge. I mean, locating oil today literally requires a small army of specialists. You've got geologists analyzing the Earth's crust, you've got satellites scanning from space, and even seismic surveys that bounce sound waves deep underground just to build these incredibly complex 3D maps. And it's only after all that crazy amount of data is processed that they bring in the exploration drills to actually test their models out. And as you might guess, this entire upfront process carries immense, staggering financial risk. It's not uncommon for energy companies to routinely drop upwards of $1 billion on a single project before they discover a single usable drop of crude oil. They're basically placing massive financial bets on microscopic data points hidden miles beneath the surface of the Earth. It's wild. But let's say they actually strike oil. Getting it out of the ground is this fascinating mechanical sequence. At first, the natural underground pressure is so high it just forces the oil right up the well. But when that pressure eventually drops, artificial lift takes over. You've probably seen those iconic pump jacks nodding away, mechanically lifting the oil up to the surface. Or, if we're talking subsea reservoirs, they build these massive offshore platforms that essentially operate like floating cities right in the middle of the world's harshest environments. Now, once it's finally out of the ground, the oil enters this colossal global transport network. Honestly, it forms one of the largest physical industries on Earth. We are talking about millions of miles of pipelines crisscrossing the globe, colossal ocean-crossing oil tankers, totally endless rail lines, and these vast, sprawling storage ports. It's basically a highly choreographed logistics ballet that moves millions of barrels every single day. But wait, raw crude straight out of the ground? It's thick, it's unrefined, and it's honestly practically useless to a modern engine. It has to be transformed. And that brings us to what might be the most complex phase of the whole journey, the massive industrial oil refinery. This is where all that raw, ancient potential is turned into everyday power. So when the raw crude arrives at the refinery, it's first pumped into these massive terminal tanks for storage. But the real magic, the actual transformation, kicks off when it gets pumped into a giant industrial furnace and superheated until it practically boils. Once it reaches that boiling, vaporized state, it's injected right into the base of this massive, towering structure called a distillation tower. Now, inside that tower is where a process called fractional distillation goes down. Simply put, crude oil is a massive mix of different hydrocarbons, and those molecules turn back into liquids at different temperatures. So as this superheated vapor rises up the tower, the temperature actually cools. The heaviest compounds, they condense into liquid right at the hot bottom, but the lighter, more volatile parts, they travel all the way up to condense at the cooler top. Basically, heat alone separates the crude into these distinct, super useful layers. And the result of all this is pretty amazing, complete utilization, with practically zero waste. A single barrel gets completely chopped up, you get gasoline for your car, diesel for heavy trucks, jet fuel for planes, but that's not all. It also gives us liquefied petroleum gas, that heavy bitumen used to pave our roads, and petrochemicals that are absolutely essential for plastics, lubricants, and synthetics. One raw, sticky liquid literally becomes dozens of distinct, vital products. All right, so to get that specific slice of gasoline down to your neighborhood, it's first sent to localized fuel terminals for some really rigorous quality testing. They blend in specific additives and detergents to keep your engine healthy, and then, finally, load it up into those big highway tanker trucks. Those trucks eventually roll up to your local station and drop the fuel into the massive underground tanks hidden right beneath where you park. But, beneath all the heavy machinery and the deep geology, there's a hidden human system keeping this whole thing alive. Operating this sprawling network requires structural engineers running the refineries, brave ship crews navigating ocean storms, super fast-paced commodity traders buying futures on the financial markets, and government regulators making sure safety standards are met. It is an incredibly synchronized global effort involving literally thousands of distinct human roles. Which kind of brings us back to those spinning numbers you stare at on the fuel pump. You might be wondering, if this massive infrastructure is so established and so perfectly synchronized, why does the cost to the driver constantly fluctuate? Well, that final price tag is dictated by a highly sensitive formula of macroeconomic inputs. The absolute baseline is basic supply and demand, sure, but layered right on top of that are massive geopolitical realities. We're talking wars that threaten supply routes, natural disasters that might suddenly shut down a major refinery, or unified production decisions made by OPEC. Even things like local currency exchange rates and government taxes act as mechanical inputs that directly alter the final price you pay. And because this whole system runs so incredibly efficiently, there is almost zero slack. So how does a single disruption thousands of miles away alter this delicate global equation? Well, think about a blocked canal in Egypt or an unexpected massive freeze in Texas. Those events echo instantly, moving through pipelines, across trading floors, and landing directly at the nozzle you are holding in your hand. So think back to that ordinary 2-minute stop at the station we talked about at the very beginning. It feels so quick, so perfectly isolated, right? But that everyday convenience is only possible because of ancient organic matter that was transformed by deep geological time, hunted down by satellites, extracted by megastructures, shipped across the world, refined, and finally delivered to your street corner. When you really view it through this lens, you realize you aren't just buying a few gallons of liquid. You're literally tapping into one of the most complex, sophisticated supply chains humanity has ever built. It's a massive, mind-boggling triumph of engineering and planetary coordination. It truly is the invisible system that keeps the modern world moving. So the next time you pull up to a pump and swipe your card, just take a second to consider the sheer magnitude of the journey that fuel took to meet you right there. Knowing all that monumental effort hiding just beneath the surface, doesn't it completely change the way you see the world around you?